My parents abandoned me in the scorching desert while I was 6 months pregnant. Take a nice walk. My name is Emily. I'm 21 years old. And I am telling you my story because I have to. Because if I don't, the silence will eat me alive. The sun didn't just shine. It pressed against my back like a hot, heavy hand, pushing me toward nothing. It felt like punishment. Take a nice walk. Clear your head, Mom said. Her voice was brittle like dry leaves. She didn't look at me when she said it. She was looking at her own reflection in the visor mirror, checking her lipstick. You need fresh air, Dad added. He was the one driving. His eyes stayed glued to the windshield, even though we were stopped. He hated looking at me. He had hated it for months. Their big black SUV idled on the empty dirt road. The air conditioning was blasting, and I could feel the cold air still clinging to my clothes. It was the last kindness I would feel from them. My sister, Hannah, leaned out the back window. She was 23, the perfect one, the one they loved. She had a smile on her face, a real bright smile. Don't wander too far, Emily, she shouted like it was a joke, like we were on a family picnic. Then the door slammed. My father had reached across the console to pull the handle, pushing me out onto the gravel. I stumbled, the weight of the baby making me clumsy. I hadn't even fully stood up before I heard the locks click, click. It was such a small sound, but it was the loudest sound I had ever heard. The car turned. It didn't speed away. It made a slow, careful turn, a U-turn on the wide dirt path. It didn't want to spin its tires. It was calm, deliberate, and then the dust swallowed them whole. I stood there for a long time. I think it was a minute. It could have been 10. The silence they left behind was deafening. The engine noise was gone. There were no birds, no wind. Just the hum of the heat in my ears. At first I thought they were circling back. Okay, joke's over. I tried to yell. My voice came out cracked. It's not funny. I started to walk in the direction they'd gone. But the dust cloud was already settling. There was nothing there. Just a long, empty road stretching back to a highway I couldn't even see. Mom! Dad! I screamed it. I screamed until my throat felt like it was tearing. I screamed until the sound didn't even sound like me anymore. Then I stopped, because a cold, awful feeling was spreading through my stomach. A feeling heavier than the baby. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a mistake. They hadn't forgotten me. They had left me. They had left me 6 months pregnant in the middle of nowhere, with half a bottle of water and no phone. I looked down at my body, the small round swell of my belly under my t-shirt. I put my hand on it, and I could feel a tiny, faint flutter. My baby. Our baby. They hadn't just left me. They had left us. Before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment, where are you watching from? To understand why they drove away, you have to understand the family they pretended to be. From the outside, we looked perfect. We were the Carter family. We lived in a big white house with a green lawn. We went to Sunday church. My father, Richard, was a respected partner at his firm. My mother, Eleanor, sat on the board of 3 different charities. We took family photos for Christmas cards, all of us in matching sweaters. We smiled, but inside that house, love was not a feeling. It was a currency, and I was always broke. My entire life was one long comparison to my sister Hannah. Hannah was the favorite. It wasn't a secret. It was a fact, like the color of the sky. Hannah was pretty, polished, and always right. She got straight A's. She was captain of the debate team. She was going to law school, just like Dad. Mom said she had promise. Dad said she had discipline. Me? I was the creative one. That's what they called me when they wanted to be nice. I was the sensitive one. That's what they called me when I was a problem. I didn't want to go to business school. I liked painting. I liked writing. I liked quiet things. Hannah liked winning. I remember my 16th birthday. Mom and Dad gave me a savings bond for college. It's practical, Emily, Dad said. Your art is a nice hobby, but this is your future. 2 months later, for Hannah's 18th, they parked a brand new white convertible in the driveway. For our star, Dad had beamed. When I looked disappointed, just for a second, my mother pulled me aside in the kitchen. Don't you dare ruin this for your sister, she hissed. Hannah earns things. You just feel things. It's not the same. I learned to be quiet. I learned to be small. I spent most of my time in my room, painting pictures of places I wanted to go, places that were far away from them. Then, in my second year of college, I met Ryan. He wasn't like the boys my parents wanted for Hannah. He didn't have a trust fund. He worked in the campus coffee shop. But he was kind. He was the first person who ever looked at me and didn't seem to want me to be someone else. He saw me. When I found out I was pregnant, we were terrified. Ryan promised he would stay. He said he loved me. He said we would figure it out. A week later, his phone was disconnected. His dorm room was empty. He was just gone. I found out later my father had paid him. He convinced Ryan that it was the best thing for everyone. He gave him $20,000 to disappear from my life. I was alone, and I had to tell them. I sat them down in the living room, the same living room where we opened Christmas presents. I was shaking. I'm pregnant. My father's face didn't change. He didn't yell. He just stared at me like I was a bad investment. You have embarrassed us, he said. His voice was quiet. That was always worse. My mother started to cry. But they weren't sad tears. They were angry tears. How could you? She whispered, staring at the fireplace. After everything we've given you, you've ruined this family's name. You've ruined my reputation. Hannah, who was sitting on the sofa, just sighed. I always knew you'd mess up, Emily. You're just weak. That night, my mother came into my room. I was crying. I thought for a second she had come to comfort me. She sat on the edge of my bed, but she didn't touch me. You've made your bed, Emily, she whispered, her voice cold. Now you have to lie in it. I thought they meant disappointment. I thought they meant shame. I thought they meant I would have to do this alone. I didn't realize they meant death. I didn't realize they had already decided. I was the stain they had to remove, the problem they had to solve, and that's how we ended up in the car. They told me we were going to a clinic, a special one for women in my situation. They said it was a few hours away, out of state, where no one would know. I was so stupid. I was so broken that I actually felt a small, tiny flicker of relief. I thought, maybe this is them helping. Maybe this is their strange, cold way of fixing this. I believed them. I believed them all the way up to the moment the gravel hit the side of the car. I believed them all the way up to the sound of that click. Standing there, in the baking sun, I finally understood. I wasn't the sensitive one. I was the disposable one. The weeks leading up to that drive were a special kind of hell. The house, which had never been warm, became a frozen tundra. It began with whispers. My family members were not yellers. They were planners. They were whisperers. Their anger was never hot. It was cold, and it was sharp. After I told them, they acted as if I wasn't there. I would come into the kitchen, and my mother and Hannah would stop talking. They would just stare at me, at my growing stomach, with a look of pure disgust. Then they would turn back to their coffee and start talking about the charity luncheon, as if I were a piece of furniture. My father was worse. He stopped speaking to me entirely. He worked late. He'd come home, and I'd hear his footsteps go straight up to his study. The door would lock. The real shift happened about 2 weeks before they left me. The silence broke, and the whispers started. I would hear the phone ringing late at night. My father's deep, quiet voice. It would go silent the moment I walked near the study. It's just business, Emily, my mother would say, blocking the doorway. Go to bed. You need your rest. She said it like she cared. It was the cruelest part. I started to feel like a ghost in my own home. I was a problem they were handling. Then one night I couldn't sleep. The baby was pressing on my bladder and I was thirsty. The house was dark. I walked down the hall, past my father's study. The door was cracked open. Just a tiny bit. I heard my mother's voice. Richard, I just don't know. What if? What if it goes wrong? It's not going wrong, Eleanor. My father's voice was firm. The voice he used when a business deal was closing. It's all taken care of. The spot is remote. No one goes out there, not this time of year. A pause. I held my breath. The desert is good cover, he continued. It's vast. It's clean. My heart stopped. The desert? We lived in a leafy suburb. The desert was hours away. Then I heard Hannah, and her voice was excited. It's kind of poetic, really, Hannah said. I could hear the smile in her words. She always wanted to be an artist. So dramatic. Now she gets her dramatic exit. Hannah, that's enough, my mother snapped. But there was no force behind it. What? Hannah said. It's the perfect plan. We'll say she wandered off. Pregnancy hormones. You know how emotional she's been. We'll tell the police we tried to find her. Poor thing. Just lost control. My father's voice cut in, cold and final. We'll hold a search. We'll grieve, and then it will be over. The family will be clean again. No one will question it, my mother whispered. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. She was convincing herself I didn't cry. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I stood there in the dark hallway with my hand on my belly. I felt the floorboards under my feet. I felt the cold air coming from under the door. I memorized every word, every pause, every single plan. They weren't just angry. They weren't just ashamed. They were murderers. And I was their target. I backed away so slowly, my feet making no sound. I got back into my bed. I pulled the covers up to my chin. I was freezing. A new feeling had replaced the fear. It was a terrible, cold, clear fury. I knew right then that I couldn't run. Not yet. Where would I go? I had no money. My father had closed my bank account. I had no car. My mother had taken my keys. For my own safety, I was their prisoner, so I had to play their game. For the next week, I was the girl they wanted. I was emotional. I cried. I stayed in my room. I acted lost and confused. I made myself weak. I made myself the perfect victim. When my father came to my room, his face a mask of fake concern, and said, "Emily, we're going for a drive tomorrow. All of us, to talk, to clear the air." I looked up at him, my eyes wide. "Okay, Daddy," I whispered. He smiled. A tight, thin smile. "That's my girl," he said. I knew as he closed the door that I was going to die, or they thought I was. That's the one thing they didn't know. I wasn't the sensitive one. I wasn't the weak one. I was the one who was going to survive. They thought the desert would kill me. They thought the sun and the silence would be the end of my story. It didn't kill me. It baptized me. The first hour after the SUV disappeared was about panic. I ran. I stumbled down the dirt road, screaming their names. I fell, scraping my knees on the gravel. The pain was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the pain in my chest. Then the panic turned to thirst. The heat was a living thing. It was a monster that wrapped around me, sucking the moisture from my skin, my mouth, my eyes. My bottle of water was empty in 30 minutes. The plastic bottle felt hot in my hand. I knew I couldn't stay on the road. The road was death. The road was where they left me. I saw a line of hills in the distance. They looked purple and hazy. Maybe there was shade. Maybe there was a different road. I started to walk. My shoes were thin canvas sneakers. They were not made for this. Every step was agony. The ground was baked hard, but it was covered in sharp rocks and thorns. The heat coming up from the ground was just as bad as the sun coming down. I walked for hours. The sun moved from the middle of the sky to the west, hanging low and angry, shining directly into my eyes. I thought about my baby. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my hand on my stomach. "I'm so sorry I got us into this." My body was failing. My legs were shaking. My back ached from the weight of the baby. I was so tired. I found a small, skinny bush that offered almost no shade, and I collapsed under it. This is it, I thought. This is where they win. This is where I die. I closed my eyes. I could see their faces. My father's cold eyes. My mother's tight lips. Hannah's mocking smile. They were probably home by now, sitting in the air conditioning. Maybe my mother was making dinner. The thought of it made me sick, and then I felt it. A kick. It wasn't a flutter. It was a real hard kick, right against my ribs. It was a kick that said, "I am here." I opened my eyes. The baby kicked again. Once. Twice. Like he knew we were fighting to live. A new strength filled me. It wasn't my strength. It was his. It was ours. "No," I said. My voice was a rasp. "I will not let them win." I got up. It hurt. Everything hurt. But I got up. I was not Emily, the sensitive daughter. I was not Emily, the mistake. I was a mother. And I would not let my child die in this wasteland. I walked. I don't know for how long. The sun was touching the tops of the hills. The sky was turning a terrible, beautiful orange. It was getting cooler, but I knew the cold would be another kind of danger. Then I saw it, a faint shimmer in the distance. It wasn't hazy. It was bright. A light. I prayed it wasn't a mirage. "Please," I begged to no one. "Please be real." It took me another hour to get there. I crawled the last 100 yards. My legs were gone. It wasn't a mirage. It was a small, old gas station. Just 2 pumps and a little box of a building. The sign was missing letters. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I pulled myself up on the door handle and fell inside. The bell on the door chimed, a small, cheerful sound. A man was sitting behind the counter. He was old, with a white beard and a baseball cap. He was reading a newspaper. He looked up. His eyes went wide. I tried to speak. "Help," I think I said. He was moving before I even hit the floor. "My God, child," he said. He knelt beside me. He didn't touch me. He just spoke, his voice calm. "My name is Carl. I'm calling for help right now." "You're safe." He was on the phone. "I've got a young woman here. Looks pregnant. Severe dehydration." "Yes, right away." He came back with a bottle of water and a damp cloth. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask who did this. He just put the cool cloth on my forehead. "You're going to be okay," he said. "The ambulance is on its way." "You just hold on," I cried. They were the first tears I had shed all day. They weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief. In the ambulance, they put an IV in my arm. The cool liquid felt like life. "You're lucky," the paramedic said. He was young, with kind eyes. "Another hour out there? You were minutes from organ failure. You and the baby." I looked at the ultrasound screen in the hospital later that night. The little, grainy shape of my son. His heart was beating, strong, steady. He survived, so did I. And that was their first mistake. I didn't stay in that hospital. I couldn't. The morning after they saved me, a police officer came to my room. He was gentle. "Ma'am, we need to know what happened. Who left you out there?" I looked at him. I saw my father's connections. I saw my mother's charity friends. I saw a system that believed them, not me. If I told the truth, they would find me. They would call me crazy. They would say I was unfit. They would take my baby. So I lied. "It was my boyfriend," I whispered, making the tears come. He hit me. He said he was going to get rid of the problem. He pushed me out of the car. I don't know where he is. Please, don't tell him you found me. He'll come after me." The officer's face hardened. He believed me. Pity is a powerful tool. A social worker helped me. She saw a pregnant woman, abandoned, running from a monster. She was right. She just had the wrong monster. She got me a bus ticket. She gave me $300 in cash from an emergency fund. "Go east," she said. "Go somewhere he won't look." I took the bus. I rode for 2 days, sleeping with my head against the window. I got off in a small city 2 states away, a place with no memory. I rented a tiny one-room apartment above a bakery. I paid in cash. I got a job, also for cash, waitressing at a 24-hour diner. The tips were terrible, but the owner didn't ask for ID. I used a fake name, Sarah, plain, simple, forgettable. I was Sarah for 3 weeks when I saw it. I was in my apartment, my feet propped up on a cardboard box. The small fuzzy TV in the corner was on the national news. And then I saw my house, the White House, the green lawn, a community in mourning, the reporter said, her voice heavy with sympathy. "The search for 21-year-old Emily Carter has officially been called off. She is now presumed dead." My heart hammered in my chest. They held a funeral. It was on TV. The local news covered it live. My mother's charity connections, my father's business partners, everyone was there. The cameras zoomed in on my family. They were in the front row, dressed in black. My mother held a lace handkerchief to her face. "Our sweet Emily," she choked out to a reporter. "She was just so troubled. We tried so hard." My father stood beside her, his hand on her back. He looked stoic, grieving. "She was a wonderful girl," he said, his voice thick. "Gone too soon. The pressure. It was just too much for her." Then the camera found Hannah. She was crying. Perfect, beautiful tears. "She just couldn't handle it," she whispered. She wandered off. We looked everywhere for her. I sat on my lumpy mattress 2 states away, very much alive. I was eating a piece of dry toast. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I watched them. I watched their perfect lying faces. I watched them bury an empty casket. They were good. I had to give them that. They were convincing. The whole world believed them. The reporter's voice came back. A tragic end for a young woman who couldn't cope with the pressures of single motherhood. They had their story. They had their clean ending. I turned off the TV. The room was silent. I had a new name. Sarah. I had a new number. A prepaid cell phone. And I had a new burning reason to live. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was justice. I was Sarah for 9 months. The first 3 of those months were the hardest. I was still pregnant. I was heavy. My feet swelled up so badly that by the end of my shifts at the diner, I could barely get my shoes off. I worked the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. It was the only one they had. The diner was a small, bright box on a dark highway, a magnet for truckers and insomniacs. My apartment was 2 rooms above a bakery. It was always hot, and it always smelled like yeast and sugar. I had a lumpy mattress on the floor, a hot plate, and a small, flickering TV. It was a miserable place. And it was the safest place I had ever been. My boss, Maria, was a woman who had seen everything. She was short, round, and had a tattoo of a rose on her hand. She never asked about the bruises on my arms, the ones I'd gotten in the desert. She never asked where I came from. One night I was sitting in a booth polishing silverware. I was 8 months pregnant and I was so tired I was crying, silently. Maria sat down across from me. She pushed a plate of food toward me. "Eat, mija," she said. "For the baby. You're doing the work of 2. "I can't," I whispered. "I'm so tired." "I know," she said, her voice rough but kind. "This world is not good to girls like you. For babies, you have to be a wolf. You look like a sheep, but you be a wolf inside." I never forgot that. Be a wolf. After my funeral aired, the grief I thought I would feel never came. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. Grief is for people who have lost something. I hadn't lost anything. I had been thrown away, and revenge isn't about rage. I learned that in the desert. Rage burns you out. It's hot and fast. I didn't want heat. I wanted ice. Patience. That's what I needed. My son was born on a rainy Tuesday at the county hospital. I held him, this tiny, perfect person. He looked at me with wide, dark eyes. He didn't know the world was cruel. He only knew me. I named him Leo, because he was a fighter. He was my lion. "They tried to kill us, Leo," I whispered to his tiny, sleeping face. "They tried to kill you. I will never, ever let them hurt anyone again." When I brought Leo home to the tiny apartment, the plan began. I saved every dollar from the diner. I lived on nothing. I bought a used laptop from a pawn shop. I bought a dozen prepaid data cards. I never used the same Wi-Fi. I went to the public library. I sat in coffee shops. I was a ghost. I started with my father. His company was Richard Carter Investments. It always sounded so clean, so boring. On the surface it was. He bought and sold commercial real estate. But I remembered the names he whispered on the phone, the names he cursed at dinner. I sat in the back of the library, Leo sleeping in his carrier at my feet. I searched public records. Land deeds, LC filings. My father was smart. He used shell companies, but he was also arrogant. He used the same lawyer to file all of them, and he used the same names for them. HLC Properties, Hannah, ELC Investments, my mother, Eleanor, RCL Holdings, Richard. He was buying up protected wetlands. He was buying them for pennies through his shell companies. Then he'd have one of his partners on the zoning board rezone the land. Then he'd sell it to developers for millions. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a criminal. He was poisoning the water supply for profit. I found the documents. I saved them all. I made copies. I backed them up on 3 different drives. Next, my mother, the Carter Foundation for Families. It was her pride. She hosted galas. She was in the society pages. Her charity was a joke. I always knew it. It was a way for her to feel important. But as I dug, I realized it was darker than that. I logged into her email. I still knew the password. It was Hannah Law 1. It had never been about me. I looked at the foundation's accounts. The grants. A $10,000 grant to a local private school. The same month, a teacher was fired for allegations against one of Hannah's friends. A $50,000 donation to a small clinic. The same one that had lost the DUI paperwork for a business partner's son. My mother's charity wasn't a charity. It was a slush fund. It was hush money. It was the mop and bucket my family used to clean up their messes. I downloaded every bank transfer, every "Dear Eleanor, thank you for your discretion" email. Finally, Hannah. This was the easiest. Hannah was sloppy. She was arrogant. She believed she was untouchable. She had a job at my father's company. A VP of marketing position he created for her. She had a company credit card. I hacked her email in less than 10 minutes. Her password was Future Mrs. Thompson 1, her fiancé's name. She was forging checks. Small ones at first. She was reimbursing herself for expenses that never happened. Lunches, office supplies. She was stealing from our father. But the best part? She was also using the company card for her entire wedding. The dress. The caterer. The $20,000 deposit on the venue. She was justifying it as a corporate retreat for her and her friends. I had it all. I sat in my tiny, hot apartment, Leo cooing in his laundry basket bed. I had a file on my laptop. It was labeled The Family. Inside were 3 folders. Dad, Mom, Hannah. They were full of poison, and I was the only one with the antidote. I looked at my son. They thought I was weak, I whispered. They thought I was sensitive. They forgot I was theirs. They forgot I know how to be cold. They forgot I know how to be patient. For 9 months, while my belly grew, I gathered everything. Then, for 6 more months while my son grew, I sharpened the knife. I was no longer Sarah, the waitress. I was Emily, and I was a wolf. I didn't start the fire. I just lit the first match. Leo was 6 months old. He was starting to laugh. That sound, that pure, happy sound, was what finally made me move. It was time I started small. I had to build the smoke before I showed the flames. I used a burner phone. I sent a text message to a local business reporter, a man known for being hungry and trying to make a name. Ask Richard Carter about HLC properties, I wrote. Ask him what he's building on the protected wetlands. I sent a different file from a library computer to a society gossip blogger. I sent her the bank transfer from my mother's foundation to the private school. Why is the Carter Foundation buying the silence of a local prep school? For a week, nothing. I almost lost my nerve. I was at the diner, wiping down the counter. The small TV in the corner was on the local news. And in business news, the anchor said, questions are being raised about a development deal in the old marshlands. Richard Carter of Carter Investments has been accused by a local watchdog group of... I dropped the rag. My hands were shaking. The watchdog group was a fake one. I had made the website myself 2 months ago. The reporter had just needed a source to quote. That was the first domino. A day later, the gossip blog lit up. Which high society charity queen is using her foundation as a personal piggy bank to cover up her family's dirty little secrets? It was happening. They were distracted. They were looking at their business and their social lives. They weren't looking for a ghost. Now it was time for the main event. I had been researching journalists for months. I didn't want a blogger. I wanted a killer. I found her. Her name was Jessica Riley. She was a national reporter, and she had taken down 2 senators and a CEO. She was brutal, and she was fair. I went to a new library in a different town. I created a new encrypted email account. I spent 4 hours writing the email. My subject line was, The Carter Family, Fraud, Blackmail, and Attempted Murder. My email was simple, Ms. Riley. My name is Emily Carter. You will report that I am dead. I am not. My family, Richard, Eleanor, and Hannah Carter, tried to murder me. They abandoned me in the Anza Borrego Desert when I was 6 months pregnant. I survived. They are liars. They are frauds. And they are criminals. I am attaching 3 files. File 1, proof of Richard Carter's land fraud and shell companies. File 2, proof of Eleanor Carter's use of the Carter Foundation for blackmail and hush money. File 3, proof of Hannah Carter's embezzlement. You will find they are a family that ate itself. Look deeper, EC. I attached the folders. I clicked send, and I walked out of the library, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. I didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, Jessica Riley's article didn't just drop. It exploded. It was the front page story on her national news site. The Carter Foundation, respected family accused of fraud, embezzlement, and cover-up. My name was not in it. Not yet. She was holding that back. She was building her case just like I did. She started with the money. By the end of the month, our driveway, their driveway, was lined with news trucks. Not the sympathetic local news trucks from my funeral. These were national trucks. They were sharks. I watched it all on the tiny TV in my apartment. I saw Hannah. Her engagement was canceled. The gossip blogs tore her apart. Future groom dumps embezzling heiress. I saw a clip of her, running to her car, her face blotchy. She wasn't pretty anymore. I saw my mother. She was removed from the board of her other charities. The Carter Foundation for Families was under federal investigation. I watched a video of her trying to go to the grocery store. Reporters shouted questions. Eleanor, did you use charity money to pay off your daughter's school? How many people did you silence? She dropped her bags. A carton of milk exploded on the pavement. She just stood there covered in it. I saw my father. His company's stocks tanked. His partners, the men he'd been backslapping for 20 years, were deserting him. He was suspended, pending an internal investigation. He was facing federal charges for the land fraud. I sat there, in my hot, small room. I was rocking Leo to sleep. He was wearing a little blue sleeper that I'd bought at a thrift store. He was warm and safe, and he smelled like baby powder. They had buried us. They had buried me in the desert, and they had buried themselves in their own lies. I whispered to my sleeping son, "They buried us, baby." But they forgot I know how to dig. The world knew my family were criminals, but they still thought I was a tragedy. I was still the poor, troubled Emily, who had wandered off and succumbed to the elements. My family was still using my death as a shield. In their public statements, they used me. "We are grieving," my father's lawyer said. "This family has been through an unimaginable tragedy with the loss of their daughter, Emily. These financial allegations are a distraction from their pain. Their pain. They were using my death. The death they had faked. The death they had caused. The fraud investigation was not enough. I was safe. Leo was safe. But it wasn't justice. Justice was them looking the world in the eye and admitting what they did. And I knew they would never do that. Not unless they had to. It was time for the second wave. This one wasn't for the media. This one was for them. I went to a drugstore. I printed a single photo. It was the ultrasound picture. The one the hospital gave me the night Carl found me. The one that proved Leo and I had survived the desert. I went to a post office in a town 30 miles away. I bought a small brown box. I put the ultrasound photo inside. Nothing else, I wrote a note. I put it in the box on top of the picture. I wrote it in a red marker. Big block letters. "You should have made sure I didn't walk out of that desert." I sealed the box. I addressed it to the Carter family. I sent it with signature confirmation. I needed to know the moment it arrived. 3 days later, I got the notification. Delivered. Signed for by H. Carter. Hannah, I closed my eyes. I pictured it. I pictured her opening it. I pictured her seeing the photo. I pictured her reading the note. I pictured the phone call she made to our mother. The shriek. The panic. She's alive. She's alive. She's alive. They knew. Now they knew. They knew I was out there. They knew I was watching. They knew I was the one who had ruined them. The terror I felt in the desert. The loneliness. The fear. I had just mailed it all back to them. But I wasn't done. They were panicking. They were trapped. It was time to destroy the trap. It was time for the real blow. The one I had been saving. My father was a man of technology. He was also an idiot. He was arrogant. He loved his black SUV. He had a top-of-the-line dash cam system installed. It recorded everything, inside and out. And it automatically uploaded all the footage to a cloud server. A cloud server that I had set up for him 3 years ago. A cloud server that he had never changed the password for. The password was Richard1. For months, I had been sitting on the footage. I had downloaded it all. The entire day, I had watched it. I had forced myself to watch it. I watched the drive out. I heard their voices. "Are you sure this is the spot, Richard?" My mother's nervous voice. "It's fine, Eleanor. It's remote. No one will find her until it's too late. This is almost exciting." Hannah's voice from the back. Then I watched them stop. I watched my father reach across and push the door open. I watched myself stumble out, and then, the worst part. The part I had saved. The dashcam had a rear-facing camera. It recorded the car pulling away. And in the rear window, you could see my reflection. You could see me, 6 months pregnant, running. You could see me screaming. You could see me fall to my knees. You could see my mouth open, forming the word Mom. And you could hear my sister inside the car turning up the radio. "Well," she said, her voice clear as a bell. "That's over with. I took the file." It was 45 seconds long. 45 seconds of pure, unfiltered evil. I didn't send it to the police. I didn't send it to Jessica Riley. I uploaded it to a video sharing site. I titled it, "The Abandonment of Emily Carter." Dashcam footage. Then I sent the link. I sent it to everyone. I sent it to Jessica Riley. I sent it to the local police department. I sent it to my father's business partners. I sent it to my mother's entire charity mailing list. I sent it to Hannah's ex-fiancé. It didn't go viral in hours. It went viral in minutes. The world didn't just see their fraud. The world saw everything. They saw their car speeding away. They saw my reflection in the rear window, pregnant, crying, screaming for them to stop. The news anchors who had been reporting on the financial scandal had to stop, live on air. They were speechless. They played the clip. Then they played it again. The public's anger turned from white-collar crime to attempted murder. My father and mother were arrested that night. Not for fraud, for kidnapping, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Hannah was arrested with them. I watched on the news as they were led out of the house in handcuffs. My mother was sobbing. My father's face was white. Hannah just looked empty. Their empire didn't just tank. It wasn't just ash, it was a crater. It was nothing. I turned off the TV. I picked up Leo from his crib. He smiled at me. "It's over," I told him. "We're safe." A year later, I drove back. The trial was set to begin in a week. They had been out on bail. Their high-powered lawyers had managed to get them house arrest. All their assets were frozen. The bank had taken the house, but they were allowed to stay in it until the trial. A final, small humiliation. I drove our new car. It was a 5-year-old sedan. It was blue. It had working air conditioning and a safe new car seat. Leo was in the back. He was 1 year old. He was babbling, holding a small stuffed lion. I drove down the same highways. I drove through the same leafy suburbs. I drove down the same street. The house looked awful. The perfect green lawn was dead. It was brown and yellow. The white paint on the house was peeling. The windows were dirty. A "for sale by bank" sign was hammered into the dead grass. I parked in the driveway, right where my father's black SUV used to be. I got out of the car. I was not the same girl who had been pushed out of a car. I was 22 years old. My hair was short. I had cut it myself. I was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt. My eyes were calm. I unbuckled Leo. I balanced him on my hip. He was heavy. He was real. I walked to the front door. I rang the bell. I heard shuffling. The door opened a crack. It was Hannah. I stared at her. She stared at me. She was thin. Her hair was stringy. Her eyes were dull. She was wearing a stained gray sweatshirt. She looked like a ghost. She didn't recognize me. "Not at first, can I help you?" she whispered. Her voice was a croak. "Hello, Hannah," I said. The blood drained from her face. Her eyes went wide. Her hand flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "No, you're... Who is it?" My mother's voice, sharp, annoyed. My mother appeared behind Hannah. She looked old. Her hair, which had always been perfectly blonde, was gray at the roots. Her face was a web of wrinkles. She saw me. She grabbed the doorframe. "Emily." Then my father was there. He was wearing a bathrobe in the middle of the afternoon. He was thin. His power was gone. He just looked like a frail old man. He just gaped. Hannah was trembling. She couldn't stop staring at me. "You're alive," she whispered. "Yes," I said. My voice was calm. It was steady. It didn't shake. "I am. And so is he." I turned slightly. I revealed Leo on my hip. He gurgled. He pointed a chubby finger at Hannah. My mother's knees buckled. She slid down the doorframe and sat, hard on the floor. "The baby," she breathed. "Oh, God, the baby." My father finally found his voice. It wasn't the booming, confident voice of Richard Carter. It was a weak, terrified whisper. "Emily, what do you want? Money?" "We have no money." I looked at him. I looked at this man who had tried to kill me. "You wanted me to learn responsibility," I said. My voice cut through the silence. "You told me I made my bed. You told me I had to lie in it." I looked at all three of them. My mother, crumpled on the floor. My father, shaking in his robe. My sister, who looked broken. "So I did," I said. "I learned responsibility. And I learned patience, too. And then they heard it. In the distance. Faint. But getting closer. A siren. I had called them. I had called the local police from the highway. "My name is Emily Carter," I had said. "I am the woman my family left for dead. I am going to their house right now. I am their chief witness, and I am afraid for my safety." The sirens were loud now. Red and blue lights flashed on the peeling paint of the house. My mother started to sob. A high, thin wail. We didn't mean to. We didn't think. Richard, we didn't think. My father's voice cracked. We didn't know what else to do. It was a mistake, Hannah just whispered. She was rocking back and forth, staring at me. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. I just wanted to be the only one. I didn't mean for this. But you did, I said. You all did. The police cars pulled into the driveway. The officers got out. They saw me standing on the porch holding my son. They saw the 3 broken people cowering in the doorway. I didn't have to say a word. I just stood there, the ghost at their door. The miracle I turned around. I walked back to my car. I put my son in his car seat. I buckled him in. I drove away. And I didn't look back. The media called me the miracle in the desert. They wrote articles about my survival. They talked about my will to live. But miracles don't happen by chance. They happen by will. My family was found guilty. All of them. Their faces as the judge read the sentences were blank. They were already gone. Sometimes at night, I still hear the desert wind. I live in a small house with a small yard. Leo has his own room. The wind whispers through the open window. It doesn't sound cruel anymore. It doesn't sound like death. It sounds like freedom. They wanted me gone. Instead, I became unforgettable. And every time I hold my son close, every time I kiss his head, I whisper, they left us to die. But we learned to live.